Hello. Yes, I think we are live. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Pretty good this morning. Yeah.
Do you want me to kick it off with introducing our symbol of hope,
Yes. Yeah.
animal in the thumbnail? If we can learn how to share screen maybe so we can put a picture up next time.
Yeah.
So
That's okay. Who's the animal in our thumbnail?
so this is Faye from Edgar's mission, and I believe Edgar's mission is in Victoria, Australia.
Australia. Yeah, Victoria, Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've shared anyone from Edgar's mission before, but they're quite a big animal sanctuary, aren't they?
Yeah, I
And they're
think
one of the
maybe we have
largest, maybe.
done one animal from Edgar's mission. But
We
yeah.
need, we need to keep track. Um, so what struck me about Faye, I guess in the photo, is that she's riding in a car um, as she's being transported around. And it just kind of brought me back to rescuing sheep myself as well, like having them sit in the boot and just like chilling out while we're driving down the highway. Uh, so I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know, just could relate to the photo in the thumbnail, like on the tarp because they like shit everywhere. But yeah, Faye was dropped off um, with like fractured hip, and I'll just read the quote. It says, "She was surrendered to a pound along with the words, 'If you don't take her, I'll take her out the car park and shoot her.'" So yeah, that was a pretty like traumatic process for her, I guess. Like the person that's supposed to be looking after her is not willing to do what it takes to look after someone. So yeah, there's a whole story which someone can read. It's much too long to read verbatim. But yeah, if you want to check out Edgar's mission, I think they're one of the biggest, if not biggest, in Australia.
Yeah.
Doing
Yeah.
lots of good work.
Yeah. Yeah. So people can read about Faye's story on the Edgar's Mission website.
Yeah.
Is it on the website or Facebook page or?
Facebook page. I mean, I'm assuming most of these would be doubled up. Oh no, I guess people don't use websites anymore, do they?
They still kind of do. Yeah. All right. So this episode is dedicated to Faye, and
Yep.
she's living a much better life now at Edgar's Mission,
Yeah.
where she's safe. And I hope she has a feeling of being safe, and that a feeling that she's no longer in danger of, somebody just killing her one day on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah.
All right. So the topic for today, the abolitionist approach to animal rights. So this, where do we even start with this? The abolitionist approach to animal rights is a particular theory and philosophy of animal rights that was developed by a person named Gary Francione, or Professor Gary Francione. I believe he is a law professor in the United States of America. And I don't know if he's still teaching at, I know he was teaching at Rutgers University in America. So I don't know if he's still doing that, but yeah, he's a law professor, and a long-term vegan as well. And he's the person that developed the abolitionist approach to animal rights. So we're going to be talking about that approach today and just going through what it is. We've got the website up that I'll hopefully share on the screen in a second. So there are 6 principles that Gary Francione has developed that make up the abolitionist approach. So there's 6 principles. We'll go through those, we'll discuss them, and share our thoughts about the approach. I just want to kind of say a bit of a disclaimer. Lately, Gary has kind of been expressing some views about the trans community that I personally do not agree with, and I do not believe is very helpful. And to me, his views come across as transphobic, and I don't support that at all. And I actually had a conversation with Gary on his Facebook page about this when he shared a post about his views about trans people and trans rights. And I had a conversation with him on there expressing my views, and we had a disagreement. So I don't know. I just want to put a disclaimer, because if you go onto his website, like the homepage, I don't know if it still is this way, but one of the first things that comes up is a blog he did about trans issues. And I think if someone were to just go on there and see that, it could, it could be triggering to you, or it could bring up some thoughts and feelings that are not very nice. So yeah, I just wanted to do a bit of a disclaimer that we're purely just talking about the abolitionist approach today, and we're talking about those ideas relating to animal rights, and we're kind of judging those ideas, and we're not really going to address other views or opinions of Gary Francione.
What do you think about people that are, I guess, celebrities in the vegan community using their platform to talk about issues that are not related to veganism? So like Gary talking about trans issues, or Joey Carbstrong talking about the Middle East, and directly relating it back to veganism on their vegan kind of profiles. Like, do you think that's okay to do, or do you think there's comes with an inherent risk?
We're 7 minutes in, and you're already trying to derail the discussion for today, Mark.
It's an important one because
yeah,
I am conflicted myself, because it's a case of if I had something that was close to my heart and I wanted to speak out about it, should we be using our vegan platform to do it, or should you be using a personal page or just some other avenue?
I mean, look, people are, entitled to express their opinions on their own page if they want to, like free speech. I'm not against that. I suppose they just have to be wary of the consequences, if they're willing to potentially compromise their image by doing so, or, piss people off, and maybe lose followers, or that's kind of their decision. I don't know. I don't really have too many thoughts on it right now. Maybe we can discuss it in another video or something, but I think it's different if you're relating it to animal rights, though. If you're trying to relate some other issue, I think what you're referring to with Joey Carbstrong about the war going on in Israel. I think if you're trying to relate things like that to animal rights, I don't know. I think that can get a little bit murky, I suppose. But again, people can do whatever they want. They just have to be wary of what the consequences might be. I personally don't like to do that. On the vegan page that I run, I don't talk about anything except veganism, because that's just what I want to do. I just prefer to keep my page about this one issue that I know lots about, and I don't, want to kind of bring other issues into it. I prefer to just focus on veganism and animal rights on my page that I run, which is called Vegan Education. So that's just my own opinion, though. I don't know. Maybe we can do another video on that.
Yeah, sure. I'll try not to derail the conversation.
Do you have any quick thoughts before we move on about that?
Well, obviously. Did I tell you I did activism yesterday?
No, but I suspected that because you sent me something. I think I saw a photo of like you had some lunch at the university in the city, and I thought, oh, Mark must be in the city doing activism.
Yeah, I was listening to the YouTube channel Vegan, of course, and I had a day off, so I was just getting all amped up. So yeah, I quickly just drove down to the city. I only did like an hour and 10 minutes, I think. But I spoke to a guy that was hardcore religious trying to hand out Bibles. And it was interesting. Like we didn't really get to talk about animal rights because I was also trying to talk to another lady at the same time. It was a bit complicated. But yeah, I didn't really feel like I wanted to share my opinion on religion when that's not really why I was out there speaking to people. It kind of muddies the water a bit. So I kind of thought that's kind of similar.
Yeah, it can derail the conversation a little bit. Like we're not out there to talk about other human issues. We're out there to talk about animal rights. So yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to that was a bit of a segue, but back to the topic of today, the abolitionist approach to animal rights. All right. So should we go through? Should we have a look at the website and the 6 principles?
Should we try and share it?
Yeah, I'm just doing that now.
Bear with us for any technical difficulties.
There we go. Oh, not really. It worked all right.
Just the wording at the top's a bit messed up, but I think that's just because it's trying to crush it in.
Yeah, that's okay. We can still read the text in the article.
If I do this, does that help?
Yeah, that does look better.
Okay.
Okay, on my screen it's coming up as quite small, but that's okay. I can still just read it. So excuse me if I'm coming really close to the camera and squinting.
On my screen it looks like quite large. You can do full screen?
That's okay. I don't want to mess with any settings right now. All right. The 6 principles of the abolitionist approach. So principle 1, abolitionists maintain that all sentient beings, human or non-human, have one right, the basic right not to be treated as the property of others. I'll read the summary as well. Animals are classified as property and are used exclusively as resources for humans. Although we claim to regard animals as having moral value and to not be just things, their status as property means that they have no moral value. They have only economic value. We recognize that treating animals as property is inconsistent with recognizing humans. We recognize that treating humans as property is inconsistent with recognizing humans as members of the moral community. We accept as a fundamental moral principle that all humans, irrespective of their particular characteristics, must be accorded the basic moral right not to be property. On this principle rests the universal condemnation of human slavery. The property status of animals means that animals are considered to be things, irrespective of what we say to the contrary. There is no way to distinguish humans from non-humans that can justify withholding from all sentient non-humans the same right that we accord to all humans. We need to recognize that all sentient beings are equal for the purpose of not being used exclusively as human resources. The abolitionist approach maintains that all animal use, however supposedly humane, is morally unjustified. So that's a lot of words there, but the summary of the summary, how I would summarize that, is that we, like in most places around the world, accept that humans should not be slaves. They should not be owned as chattel property. And what I guess Gary is saying is that there's no quality that that differentiates animals from humans that justifies treating animals as property and not humans. So yeah, and I think that will be explained a bit more in the not principle 2, but I think later on when they talk about sentience. So principle 1 is that all sentient beings, human or non-human, should have the basic right to not be property or essentially treated as just a thing. All right, we've got some comments here as well. Hello, guys. Do we consider insects as sentient? Maybe we'll come back to that. I think that's a whole big discussion in itself. But
I think there's evidence for it, and we kind of err on the side of caution for now.
Yeah. And Vegan for Kindness says, "Hey guys, this is a really good idea, having a stream dedicated to education around veganism." Yeah, thanks. We thought it was a good idea as well. We tend to know a fair bit about it, being long-term vegans. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for joining us, guys. So, Mark, if you could kindly scroll down on your page.
Oh, yeah. Let me figure out how to do that. Okay, is that working?
Yep. Stop.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. I do see your comments contrarian. I think when we come to the principle that discusses sentience, we'll maybe talk about that a bit more. All right. Principle 2, abolitionists maintain that our recognition of this one basic right to not be property means that we must abolish. What's happened?
My God.
What are you doing, Mark? You're messing with the settings while I'm reading.
I'm so sorry. Can you see it now?
Yeah, just leave it like that, okay? It's fine.
Yeah, my bad.
It's all right. Okay, yeah, abolitionists maintain that our recognition of this one basic right means that we must abolish and not merely regulate institutionalized animal exploitation, and that abolitionists should not support welfare reform campaigns or single-issue campaigns. This is arguably the most controversial principle of the abolitionist approach. I mean, at least amongst vegans, a lot of vegans do not agree with this one at all. So I think this one will be interesting to discuss.
I think, are you going to read the summary, or are we just going to kind of...
Yeah, I'm going to read the summary. Yep, I'll read it now. Okay, summary. Recognizing the right of animals not to be used as property requires that we abolish the institutionalized exploitation of non-human animals and not just regulate it to make it more humane. Abolitionists reject animal welfare campaigns. They also reject single-issue campaigns, a particular sort of regulatory campaign that characterizes certain forms of animal exploitation as different from or worse than other forms of exploitation, and which suggests by implication that other forms of exploitation are acceptable. Both welfare campaigns and single-issue campaigns actually promote animal exploitation and result in partnerships between supposed animal advocates and institutionalized exploiters. So there's a lot to unpack there. I
think there's kind of 2 parts of it, like the principle maintaining that a recognition of one basic right means we must abolish and not regulate exploitation. I think vegans agree with that part. It's just the second part, saying not supporting welfare reforms, is the bit that's the tricky one, because like people think that using welfare reforms to achieve an end to animal exploitation is the fastest way there.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think I don't think all of them, but I think most vegans do agree with abolishing institutionalized animal exploitation. But then, yeah, it's just about whether getting to that point can involve welfare campaigns. So I think a lot of vegans see welfare campaigns as like a step towards abolition, or at least somehow helping reduce suffering in the meantime, or having some positive effect in the meantime. Whereas abolitionists completely reject animal welfare campaigns. It doesn't, I mean, in this summary, it doesn't really go into much about why it rejects welfare campaigns. I suppose in general, one of the reasons is that it simply is the abolitionist approach is simply just against regulating or trying to make animal exploitation more humane. I think the reasons behind that, firstly, is because obviously abolitionists believe that there is no way to humanely exploit someone, and that it's a bit of a futile cause trying to make animal exploitation more humane. So maybe that's one of the reasons, I guess. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I was speaking to a lady yesterday about this because she was asking why if we were a part of other groups. And I said, this is probably one of the things that separates us from other groups is the not doing single issue campaigns. And I brought up the live export stuff. And it kind of, yeah, I guess it promotes exploitation in a way that you're kind of forced to create like a hierarchy of suffering and a hierarchy of moral consideration. So yeah, I think they understood that. Like we need like a consistent message across the board. We're kind of trying to do both. I think some animal groups are getting better at doing both. Like I've heard a bit about like PETA in America. They're much more like vegan hardcore message than they used to be. So yeah, I wonder if we'll approach a time where we just don't use welfare language, or it'll always be like, hey, we're vegan, this is what we believe, but also we're gonna try and stop this thing. Like you should be vegan, but in the meantime, we're gonna try and stop the X, Y, Z. I feel like that's probably the most likely because it seems like it's just still part of the vegan culture to be fighting for like individual changes and like
Like
reforms and stuff.
welfare reform, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just like feels easier for people or
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, another part of this principle is that it says that both welfare campaigns and single issue campaigns promote animal exploitation, and I think what Gary means by that is that basically a welfare reform campaign, what it's saying is that there's not really a problem with animal use or animal exploitation per se. It's okay, actually, even to use animals. We just need to treat them better when we do. So I think in that sense, it promotes animal exploitation, and even welfare campaigns, you know, imply really that whatever reform is being asked for is good and ethical. So, for example, and we've talked about this at length in another one of our videos that was specifically about welfarism. I think it was our first video even. But you know, for example, the welfare campaign to ban battery cages. Well, by banning battery cages, you're implying that you know, in the egg industry, you're implying that free range eggs are good and ethical and okay. You know, so by asking to ban this particular practice, by implication, you're saying that whatever the alternative is better and
acceptable.
acceptable and ethical. So by promoting reform, you're not questioning at all the use of animals. You're almost kind of saying like, the use of animals is not the problem. It's just this particular practice that's the problem. So I think that's what Gary means when he says that welfare campaigns actually promote animal exploitation, because you're promoting the humane, like happy exploitation, right? Which
Yeah.
I
And
think
I'm a
Gary is saying that, maybe his view is that in the long run, that's not helpful. People might see it as being helpful in the short term to try and give animals slightly, slightly better lives in the short term. But in the long term, that's not helping us get towards abolition. It might even be further entrenching the idea that it's okay to use animals as long as we kind of treat them better. So I think that's what he means when he says that it promotes animal exploitation.
Yeah, and I think like a example also of how it's problematic that I've noticed recently is the gas chamber stuff in the UK, I believe, with Pignorant. Um, you haven't seen Pignorant, have you? I haven't either. There was a video posted by a channel called Mel and Steve. I think they still go under that name, of them kind of storming um, an office building that runs a pig factory where they gas pigs. And it was very much like, shame on you, the company, for doing this. Like, you've got blood on your hands. How do you sleep at night? It was like really aggressive. But like, I think the problem is it's just so directed at the industry and just taking away any responsibility from the consumer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that getting footage and like educating people about how animals are treated is necessarily a bad, like, I think that's a good thing. Like, we need more education. We need like glass windows of the slaughterhouse, for lack of a better analogy. But to then use that information to shame one particular group, I don't think that's helpful. I think
Like
it's disempowering to the consumer.
like to use that to, again, it's kind of giving off like welfarist vibes, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't
because
say that it is completely welfarist, but by targeting, like, what do you want the company to do? What do they want the pig? I don't know. Is it the slaughterhouse company? Is it the meat producing company? I don't know. But what do they want the meat producers to do? Like, why are they like? It's not really their. It's the consumers, isn't it? It's the
yeah,
consumers that are actually causing this to happen, not the company. So yeah, it does kind of give off welfarist vibes, because anything that's targeted at the company, at the government, to make changes, the only changes they can make have to be welfare. Like, they're not going to just shut down their whole company or the whole practice while there's still demand for it. So yeah,
yeah,
I get what you mean. Like, whenever I see anything that's targeted companies or government, I always just think like, what, like the animal advocates, what are you guys really trying to achieve here? Like,
yeah. I think that
what do you want them to do? Like, they're going to keep doing whatever there is a demand for. So
yeah, I think it's particularly like a sore spot for us as well, because we're trying, like, we go out into the public and talk to people and trying to empower people to make ethical decisions, and then it feels a little bit like we're undermined because these other groups are like not targeting consumers. And it's like, okay, it's okay to eat pigs. There's nothing wrong with eating pigs. It's this particular company or this particular practice that's doing this horrible thing. But hey, like, the general population, you're all cool, mate. Like, don't worry about it. Like,
yeah,
we'll handle it.
exactly.
We'll handle it. We'll get this thing shut down. It's like,
Yeah,
the whole reason why it exists in the first place, it's because of the consumer.
yeah,
I
I know
think
it
it's
is.
frustrating for me in that sense. I'm trying to
Yeah,
empower people to make ethical decisions,
yeah.
and they're being kind of swindled in the sense that, like, being told they don't need to do anything, we'll get this shut down on your behalf, or
Yeah, like, you don't need to do
whatever.
anything. It's the companies that need to change, or it's the governments that need to put in certain laws or whatever. And that's just
Yeah.
not the case. And
How dare the companies do X, Y, and Z? Like, shame on them. How dare they? The greedy, like, you know, I don't know.
The greedy
But
buggers. Yeah,
trying not
no,
to use
I
any
completely
crass
agree.
language.
I completely agree. And yeah, like when we go and we talk to people on the street, it is really frustrating when they have this mindset, this welfarist mindset, where they think it's okay to use animals. We just need to treat them better, or we need to just use them in a more humane way. It's so frustrating knowing that vegans are the ones that are like sending that message across. And then we're trying to like undo that and be like, actually, no, like it doesn't really matter how you treat them. They shouldn't be exploited in the first place. We shouldn't be using them solely as resources in the first place. So yeah, it often does feel like in our activism we're trying to undo a lot of the stuff that like animal advocates are
Yeah.
actually promoting with these welfare campaigns and everything.
And just like re-empower people. It's like
Yeah.
one of the most empowering social justice movements because it's like the people are directly buying into it.
Yeah, you can directly do something
Good,
about it. It's yeah.
good luck not having like, you know, making a massive impact on global warming. Like, good luck to you. Like, that's very, very, very hard. But like, not eating animals 3 times a day, like, it's pretty easy. Like, that's quite empowering if you can make
Yeah.
that much of a difference.
Yeah.
Should we go to the next one before we
Um
rage?
Yeah, I just will quickly say something about the single issue campaigns because we've talked mainly about welfare. So with the single issue campaigns, that's where maybe you know uh, animal advocates are focusing on like one particular way that we use animals, and they try to get that shut down. So it could be like in Adelaide at the moment, there's a bit of a campaign to ban duck shooting. So I think duck shooting people maybe do it as a bit of a sport. I don't know if they actually eat the ducks when they shoot them. I'm
No idea.
assuming so. I don't know. Who knows? But in SA, they're trying to get duck shooting to be banned by law. So that would be an example of a single issue campaign, I suppose.
I
So
think they're a bit trickier to argue against because
can
sometimes
I
they
just
might.
explain? Sorry, I
Sure.
wasn't finished. So basically, yeah, the campaign is to ban duck shooting. So I guess um, according to the abolitionist approach, that would be not an ideal thing to do because you're making it look like duck shooting is somehow a much worse form of animal exploitation than everything else. So you're kind of making it look like duck shooting is a really big problem rather than just animal exploitation and animal use in itself. So you're kind of singling out a particular issue of animal use and making it look like that is somehow way more deplorable or morally worse than everything else. And I guess the abolitionist approach sees that as a bit of a problem because, again, the idea of the abolitionist approach is that all animal use and all animal exploitation is equally as bad as each other, and that we should be generally trying to shift our view away from animals being objects and things towards animals being non-human persons.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one pushback that someone might have a issue with that is like from an ecology point of view, like if there is like an immediate danger to like species extinction or ecology collapse, something that's like very timely pressing. But again, that's probably more from like an environmental lens, I suppose. Like maybe
Yeah.
if you could like, yeah, argue from an environmental lens, maybe that's slightly different.
Mm.
Like say they're about to kill the last bird species or something. It's like that is
Yeah.
quite pressing. But it's yeah, from a moral animal rights perspective, it's like yeah.
Yeah. I don't think single issue campaign. I don't think all single issue campaigns are equal either. Like I think some maybe are more helpful than others. Some are more like welfarist in nature than
Yeah.
others. So yeah, maybe they're not all as bad as each other. I generally don't like to do them anyway because I would if I'm gonna spend my time going out and protesting or doing some kind of activism, I'd rather just be doing vegan activism. So like I'm not going to go to a protest to like ban duck shooting when in that time I could be educating people about veganism, or so like I just prefer to spend my time, if I'm going to be out there doing something, I'm going to be talking to people about veganism rather than just one particular animal issue, because again, it's just kind of ineffective as well if we're trying to like address each way that we exploit animals individually. Like it's just infinite. Like we're never gonna get anywhere really, because there's just so many ways that we use animals, and it's going to be impossible to address them individually, especially seeing as it usually takes decades to actually make any changes with these single issue campaigns. I don't know how long the ban duck shooting campaign's been going on for, but it's been a long time.
Yeah, maybe one way to do it would be to like if there is some kind of signature thing to say like ban it, like you could talk to people and be like, oh, are you against duck shooting? And then, oh, like I'm assuming you're vegan then, or like, like related back to veganism. And then you're kind of doing both, I guess.
True. All right, should we keep going, because we're only still up to principle 2 and it's been almost 40 minutes.
Lucky we're doing this video in 2 parts. No,
Are
just
we?
kidding. Just kidding.
We were hoping to do it in one part. All right, let's do principle 3. Principle 3, can you scroll down a little bit?
Yeah, okay. Just bear with me while I do this very cautiously.
All right, that's good. So,
okay.
All right, principle 3. Abolitionists maintain that veganism is a moral baseline and that creative, non-violent vegan education must be the cornerstone of rational animal rights advocacy. So that one's pretty straightforward. In summary, abolitionists embrace the idea that there is veganism and then there is animal exploitation. There is no third choice. To not be a vegan is to participate directly in animal exploitation. Abolitionists promote veganism as a moral baseline or a moral imperative, and as the only rational response to the recognition that animals have moral value. If animals matter morally, then we cannot treat them as commodities and eat, wear, or use them. Just as someone who promoted the abolition of slavery could not own slaves, an abolitionist with respect to animal slavery cannot consume animal products. For an abolitionist, veganism is a fundamental matter of justice. As the abolitionist approach is a grassroots movement, advocating veganism as a fundamental principle of justice is not something that requires large, wealthy charities and leaders. It is something that we all can do and must do as a grassroots movement. Each of us must be a leader. So, yeah, I kind of like this principle. I think that, I agree that veganism is a moral baseline. So it's basically like the least that we can do if we care about animals, and then anything further is kind of just, I don't know, more and more ethical. But at the very least, we cannot, as far as is possible and practicable, use animals, eat them, wear them, and use them at least unnecessarily. So veganism is a moral baseline in that sense. It's the least we can do. What else does it say? Yeah, education. So this is also a bit of a like how vegans should do activism, and it's saying creative, non-violent vegan education should be the cornerstone of animal rights advocacy. So I agree with that too. My only concern is that I don't know how far that's getting us, because it seems that the big kind of organizations, the like not-for-profit organizations, they always get the platform, I don't know how much we can achieve just like on an individual level. It can feel quite isolating. Like when we go out and we do activism, it's just like, it's quite isolating because we're not part of really like a group. We've got each other. But it seems like the big organizations that are usually welfarist, they always get the big platform publicly. And the abolitionists, I mean, here we are over a decade later since this approach was created. And I don't know, how far have we really got with it? That's my concern.
Yeah, I feel like it is in the discourse of vegans though. Like people understand abolition as a concept now.
Yeah.
And I've like listened to a few YouTube channels, and I think people are aware of it, which is good. Like it's a good starting point, and I think there is conversation around abolition versus welfare and like the problems with welfare, and I do think that it's kind of seeping into the big organizations. Like I
Mm,
think even though it's not this huge tidal wave itself, I think that it's kind of insidiously like affecting the charities.
mm,
Like for
yeah.
example, like Animals Australia specifically stating on their website that they are not a vegan organization, that kind of thing. And then like people with these kind of moral baselines calling them out on that, and then Animals Australia like taking that off their website.
Oh, did they revoke that? Did they
Well,
remove
that
it from?
hasn't been like formally revoked, but it's like not on their website anymore. So I think
Yeah.
it's almost like holding like big orgs to like some kind of standard. I think it's kind of seeping in there. I think the
Yeah.
same things happen with Peter. Peter used to be more like welfarist, um, maybe more like I don't know, like the violent kind of stuff, maybe like throwing things on people. I don't know if they still do that, but I feel like the culture of it has shifted, even though the abolitionist approach isn't itself the like big push group. I think it's like the ideas are kind of seeping into the culture. Hopefully,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Does that
Hopefully.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And yeah, in general, I like this principle. I agree with it. I think that advocacy should be always focused on veganism as a moral baseline, and it should be creative and non-violent. I'm not a fan of violent activism, even though there's a part of me that's kind of like, well, drastic times call for drastic measures in the sense of like obviously what's happening to animals is an absolute atrocity,
Mm.
and like I don't think violence towards people or animals is okay, but I don't know, some people might consider like theft as violence, like when animal activists have gone into farms or something and they've taken an animal, like saved an animal in a farm. Some people might consider that as being like theft, and violence, I guess. So I'm definitely against like physical violence towards anyone um, in the name of activism. But yeah, there's other things that maybe are a little bit more.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like on one hand, I agree. Like time is of the essence. You know, these are individuals that are being exploited and are going to be killed. But then also like we're not living in a vacuum, and the society that we live in, there's lots of groups that have a claim on moral high ground. And are we okay if we use violence to get our point across? We kind of have to be okay with other groups using violence to get their point across. It gets pretty murky.
Yeah, true.
Like religion, I don't know. You said it, Emily. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like which group is allowed to use violence?
It's a good
It's
point.
like freedom of speech, right? It's kind of similar to that. It's like if we have the right to free speech, then you have to concede that everyone has the right. You can't pick and choose who has the right to that.
Yeah. And I mean, veganism is a principle of non-violence, essentially. So it'd be quite hypocritical to be preaching non-violence by using violence. So
Yeah,
yeah,
but
I do agree with.
there have been civil wars over slavery, so
True.
maybe that's on the cards for veganism.
Time will tell.
Yeah,
Anyway, should we move on to principle number 4?
yeah. Oh yeah, sorry,
If
that's
you
my
can
job to
scroll
scroll
down.
down. I need to teach you how to do this, please.
Yeah.
No, that's all good. Oh, it's
Okay,
only a small one.
you can stop there. Yeah. All right. You have to go right to the top of the paging.
It's satisfying.
Principle 4. The abolitionist approach links the moral status of non-humans with sentience. I don't know if Contrarian is still watching, but here we go. Non-human with sentience alone and not with any other cognitive characteristic. All sentient beings are equal for the purpose of not being used exclusively as a resource. So, in summary, sentience is subjective awareness. There is someone who, oh yeah, he's still, they are still there. Sentience is subjective awareness. There is someone who perceives and experiences the world. A sentient being has interests, that is, preferences, wants, or desires. So this is just explaining what sentience is, I suppose, according to Gary. If a being is sentient, then that is necessary and sufficient for the being to have the right not to be used as a means to human ends, or in other words, as a thing or as property. The recognition of this right imposes on humans the moral obligation not to use that being as a resource. It is not necessary for a sentient being to have human-like cognitive characteristics in order to be accorded the right not to be used as property. So again, lots to unpack here, but basically, sentience is subjective awareness. So, and I've read a lot of other articles by Gary about this issue, so I might be able to go into it in a little bit more detail. So, sentience being subjective awareness. So, basically, there is a mind, some kind of mind there, someone there who is capable of recognizing their own life. So they're aware of their own life. They perceive and experience the world in like a conscious kind of way, and they have interests. They have preferences, wants, and desires. So they, it could be argued that sentient beings have an interest in continuing to live. So they might act out of self-preservation and survival. So they do all that they can to preserve their life and to continue to live. They may run away from danger or fly away from danger. They're capable of perceiving danger and they can respond to it and escape it, or fight or flight, fight away the danger or flee the danger. That's, I think, a sign of sentience. So yeah, they have an interest in preserving their own life. I guess I think that, at the moment, this is just my opinion. I don't know, it's not really based on science or anything, but this is just my opinion that there may be kind of levels to sentience. I think I'm not quite comfortable claiming that all sentience is like equal sentience, in the sense that, like, I don't know if a mosquito or a bee is kind of aware of their life really in the same sense as like a cow or a sheep or a human even. But maybe that doesn't really matter. Like, I think what the abolitionist approach is kind of arguing is that as long as there is some kind of sentience there, someone present who cares about what happens to them and who has an interest in their life, that's really what matters. It's for them to not be at least treated as property and exclusively as a resource, right? Because if they're sentient, that's kind of indicating that there's more to them. Like, they're not just a resource, right? So yeah, okay, so here we go. Microorganisms have an interest in continuing to live. Might be too broad a definition.
So can I try and address this one? Attempt to.
Sure.
So yeah, often we get caught up in trying to dispel that that's like microorganisms count. But I think maybe a different way to go about it is just to like go, yeah, okay, maybe they do have some kind of sentience. And then coming back to the definition of veganism is like, as far as is possible to avoid exploitation and cruelty. So it's like, I don't know at this time whether it's possible to avoid exploitation and cruelty of microorganisms, but maybe in the future that is possible. Maybe that's a different way of addressing that than trying to like
Maybe.
fight it so hard.
Well,
And
yeah, I
it's the
think
same with
most.
mosquitoes, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I think most vegans would well, the microorganisms, I think most vegans would respond by saying they're not sentient, and therefore they don't count, or at least in this yeah
oh, thanks, contrarian.
yeah, which, to me personally, again, not based on anything scientific, but to me, there probably are certain things that are associated with sentience. So, like, to me, I think like subjective awareness, like, so here it's defining sentience as subjective awareness. I think to have subjective awareness, you need to have some kind of like mind, or potentially like a brain of some sort, or like neurons of some sort, because to me, neurons are the thing that gives someone a mind that can like think and experience and interest. Like, that's what would kind of give someone interests. So for example, like a plant, there's no, and plant sentience seems to be a bit of a controversial issue, but to me, with my knowledge at the moment, a plant is not sentient, and there are lots of signs of that. One of them being that they don't have like a nervous system, they don't have neurons, they don't seem to have a mind of any sort. And also, and Gary has made this point before as well, they are stationary. Plants don't tend to move, like they're not very mobile, right? So they can grow, they can, like, you've got ground creepers that can creep along the ground, I suppose, but they don't actually move. They root themselves in place, they're stationary, and therefore they can't really like run away from like danger or anything like that. They do have some defense mechanisms against being consumed by animals, but those defense mechanisms, I guess, maybe have been selected over time evolutionarily, that are more based on like chemical reactions. So they may have a chemical substance in them that is not very nice to eat, like bitter or something like that. Or they might have spikes, to keep animals away. So like they're not, to me, those things don't indicate sentience. It's more of just like a physical thing about them that has been naturally selected. Whereas someone who is sentient might have more of like a fight or flight response. They're able to detect danger before it's actually hit them, and they're able to react in some way, so to prevent that danger, whereas plants can't really do that. So where I'm going with this, I suppose, is that I think one sign of sentience is having like some kind of brain or neurons, right? Having some kind of mind or like consciousness. So microorganisms, to me, as far as I know, I don't think they have neurons or any kind of nervous system. They may move, I suppose.
Well, it's some kind of ability to understand and perceive those reactions, I suppose. Like we probably have similar reactions to things that are hot and cold, but our brain is able to perceive that and like create senses of fear and dread and pain and worry, and like, but a plant, I don't know. I think most people are trying to just use this as like a scapegoat kind of thing.
Yeah, like I'm willing to admit that we don't even know everything about human consciousness. Like there's a lot about the idea of consciousness that, and sentience, I suppose, that we don't even know about. So there's a lot of unknowns still, but I think that it is okay to kind of like, I think for the sense of practicality and like being able to make moral decisions, we kind of have to like have some kind of line. We have to kind of draw a line somewhere, I suppose. And at the moment, to me, I draw that line at animal. Like if someone is part of the animal kingdom, then and they appear to be sentient, then that's enough for me to avoid as far as I possibly can to exploit them. So even if I'm not 100% sure if like mosquitoes are sentient, I'm still going to, avoid as far as I can. I'm going to err on the side of caution, basically. And I'm going to try as far as I can not to harm them or exploit them or anything. Same with ants. Like, I don't know. I think there is indication. I think ants have neurons, and I think most insects have neurons, and that they appear to be able to detect danger and like flee from it and that kind of thing, which indicates a possible interest in their life and continuing to live and not be harmed. So I'm going to just err on the side of caution, and I'm not going to exploit insects. This comment says mosquitoes. If not, then also not bees. But yeah, I definitely avoid harming mosquitoes too. So I don't kill them. I don't kill any bugs if I don't need to. Even if a mosquito is kind of like stinging me or something, I'll try and just like brush them off, like I'm not just going to slam and just kill them. Like I'm definitely going to think about their life and take that into a little bit more consideration probably than most people. So yeah, bees as well. Like I don't think honey is okay. I don't think it's okay to exploit bees for their honey. Again, like they could be sentient. There are indications that they are sentient. So I'm going to err on the side of caution. I don't need to eat honey, so I'm not going to, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Have we got another? Oh my goodness, is that only principle 4?
There's 2 more. We can try and get through them quickly.
I thought there was 7.
No, there's 6.
Oh, fair enough. That's good.
All right, let's go to number 5 then.
Yep, bear with me.
All right, principle 5, abolitionists reject all forms of human discrimination as well, including racism, sexism, heterosexism, ageism, ableism, and classism, etc. They are just as they reject speciesism. So Gary, in this point, I guess I'll just read the summary, which will explain it. The abolitionist approach to animal rights rejects speciesism because, like racism, sexism, heterosexism, and other forms of human discrimination, it uses a morally irrelevant criteria, species, to discount and devalue the interests of sentient beings. But any opposition to speciesism makes sense only as a part of a general opposition to all forms of discrimination. That is, we cannot oppose speciesism, but claim that, as animal advocates, we do not have a position on these other forms of discrimination. We cannot say that we reject species as a morally objectionable criterion to discount or devalue the interests of non-humans, but that we do not have a position on whether race, sex, or sexual orientation or preference are morally objectionable criteria when used to discount or devalue human interests. Our opposition to speciesism requires that we oppose all discrimination. So basically, it's just linking that all discrimination is wrong for the same reasons. It's wrong to use any criteria that is morally irrelevant to discriminate against someone, species being one of those morally irrelevant criteria. So I do find this one interesting. I agree with it. I completely agree with it. I think they're all wrong for the same reasons, for sure. I just find it interesting that Gary's views about trans people is maybe, he argues that it does fit in because he doesn't think that he thinks that trans people should have the same rights as any other human, but he doesn't believe that they should have extra rights to, for example, be able to access things that cis people can access. So I think he would say that a trans woman should not be able to use or access things that cis women should be able to. So that like a trans woman shouldn't be able to use the women's bathrooms or play women's sports or like things like that. And there's a lot of controversy around it. I don't want to go into it right now, but anyway, I think that it's interesting.
I think it's difficult because human discrimination is very different to animal slavery. Like if we still were not sure about the whole human slavery deal, then I think you probably could make that parallel a lot easier. But I think literally treating someone as property is quite different from like discrimination. And then on top of that is like the practical application of how we avoid that.
Yeah.
Because we are trying to take, like, we have 7 billion or whatever people in the world, and we are trying to weigh up everybody's interests, and it's quite difficult to do that. But that's quite different to discounting animals' interests at all.
Yeah, I think it's much more drastic. Like what like being property, like literally being considered to be a thing, is very different to other forms of discrimination of like what bathroom people can use, or whether
Like who
women
can
have
get
the right to
married.
vote, or like having the right to vote and things like that. Like that's very different to like the base. I guess that's a point that he makes. The basic right to not be property is which opens the floodgate to be able to, like, once you're property, the owner can basically do anything with you as long as like we still have some laws and regulations around it, but essentially the owner can do whatever they want as long as there's like a purpose to it. So they can open a farm and buy all these animals and raise all these animals and then kill them, and that's perfectly fine because they're the property. So yeah, I think I don't want to talk too much more about this principle. I generally agree with it though. So yeah.
Do you agree with it? Do you agree with it because you're abolitionist, or do you agree with it for like its own merit?
I don't agree with anything simply because I'm abolitionist. I agree with things on their own merit anyway.
But like,
Like
okay,
I agree with
maybe I didn't
something.
word that correctly. Like the other points seem to flow a little bit more fluently. Like because I'm abolitionist, like because I reject animal slavery, essentially, I don't promote animal slavery. So it's like
Yeah.
because I'm abolitionist, I don't promote animal slavery.
Yeah.
But because you're abolitionist, do you reject all forms of human discrimination, or is that something different?
I think it's I guess it's slightly different. Like I think this is more about speciesism than it is about abolitionism, which obviously they're linked. But I like to think that I, even the other principles too, I like to think that I take each idea as its own thing, and I'm critical of any idea basically. And I judge any idea on its own merit, not just because I like label myself as an abolitionist. That means that I like agree to every single thing that other abolitionists agree to, or that Gary says here, or whatever. But no, I think generally as a human being person, not just an abolitionist, that I agree that discrimination based on morally irrelevant criteria is wrong.
Yeah. See, that seems to be like straying from veganism, though. Like it's almost like you're vegan because you reject forms of discrimination, but not really the other way around, maybe. I don't know, maybe it's just semantics.
Maybe. Should we go on to the last principle? Because we got to wrap
Well,
up soon.
I'm in control of the scrolling, so I guess I could always stay on 5.
All
How's
right,
that?
that's good. Principle 6. Abolitionists recognize the principle of nonviolence as a core principle of the animal rights movement. So, summary: the abolitionist approach promotes nonviolence because it sees the animal rights movement as an extension of the peace movement to include concerns about non-human animals. Moreover, given that most people engage in animal exploitation, there is no principled way to distinguish exploiters for the purpose of justifying violence. Finally, because there is pervasive exploitation, violence cannot be understood as anything but a pathological reaction to what is regarded as normal. The only real option is, on the individual level, to embrace veganism as a moral baseline, and on the social level, to engage in creative, nonviolent vegan education from an abolitionist perspective. So, yeah, again, I mostly agree with that. I think, veganism is a principle of peace, really, and nonviolence. I don't agree that it's really helpful to use violence to try and further the message.
Yeah, not sure. I'm probably less convinced by principles 5 and 6, just for like the relevance to animal rights. Like I get the sense that he's trying to, like when he's created this, he's trying to link all oppression and violence and things all into one like neat package kind of thing, like a more holistic kind of approach.
Yeah.
But maybe, yeah, I don't know.
There might be, are you saying there might be kind of caveats or like,
Yeah, well, maybe more edge cases, but like, I don't know. Maybe there's like I
idiosyncrasies?
don't know if
That's
I'm
the
a,
word.
eh?
Idiosyncrasies. There might be idiosyncrasies to the principles 5 and 6, like situations that maybe nuances. I don't know how many more words I can
Yeah, I
think
mean,
of.
there's probably nuances with all of them, but I get a sense that it's straying into the human rights thing. Like it's
Hmm.
trying to address human rights stuff.
I mean, look, I think it's just trying to, in a way, connect speciesism and animal rights to human rights, which like
It,
I think it's just saying that they're all wrong for the same reasons, which I agree
yeah,
with.
but he could say that without saying that because like abolitionists are this way because of that. Like he could just assume like, you know, that society is against, um, I can't remember. How do I scroll up? I'll try and use this one. Hang on. He could say society attempts to reject forms of human discrimination, and because of this, they should also reject speciesism, which is discrimination on the basis of species.
But he's kind of saying it the other way around. He's saying if you reject speciesism, then you should also reject all other forms of discrimination. And I guess by saying that, it's like implying the other way around as well. If you reject these other things, then you should also reject speciesism. But he's just worded it the other way around.
Yeah, and so what he's doing, I think, in maybe this is a better way to explain it. I think I just the sense that I get. I feel like if you're convinced and you go vegan, once you get to principle 5, you reject speciesism, and then he's trying to get you on board with other forms of discrimination. So it's like he's kind of speaking to the vegans, like you reject speciesism, therefore you have to also reject other forms of human discrimination. Whereas I feel like maybe he should have taken the approach, if he's talking to non-vegans, like because you reject forms of human discrimination, that should also be extended to animals.
Hmm.
What do you think? I don't know. That's just me like spitballing here.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, I don't know why
Like it feels human
what the
centric.
reasons are why he's worded it that way around as opposed to the other way around. But I think, like to me anyway, you look at it, it makes sense. So I don't know. I haven't really thought about it very much in terms of doing it the other way around. But yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
Interesting. Should we wrap up soon? Because it's already been like almost an hour and 10 minutes. I know you love your long videos, but
I love
I
long
worry
format.
that
This is
I
how
worry
the
that
world
people
functions.
I worry that people's attention spans aren't very long and they're not going to want to watch a video that's this long.
Well, maybe, but if it was me, that I would want to watch it. Like, I would watch this video.
That's
Make
because you
videos,
like
make videos that you would want to watch, right?
you have a long attention span. That's why.
We'll make the
Any-
long videos and then you can edit them and cut them into like snippets.
Oh god, no, I don't have time for that. All right. Well, let's wrap up there. So yes, this was just a very quick, really, introduction to the abolitionist approach. There's a lot of on Gary's website, this website here that we're showing. There's a lot of blog posts about all sorts of like issues within this, answering all different questions and stuff. There's blogs about the issue of pets and welfareism and single issue campaigns, and like there's all sorts of stuff on Gary's website. As I said at the beginning, a disclaimer that he also has some, in my opinion, not very helpful views about the trans community and views that I don't agree with. But yeah, his stuff about animal rights is definitely very interesting and worth a read. He's written several books about it. So yeah, there's I would recommend to read his stuff about animal rights.
Which book did you like? Which one did you read? Did you read this one?
Yes, I do have a copy of Eat Like You Care. Yeah, that is the one that I have read.
Yeah.
But I've also read pretty much all of his blog posts as well. Like I discovered
You could
Gary
probably get
Franklin.
enough out of it from just the blog post almost, but if you wanted
Yeah.
the whole package, maybe.
I discovered the approach probably like 10 or maybe more than 10 years ago now. So yeah. Curious about the pharmaceutical product point. Did we talk about pharmaceutical products? I don't know. Or maybe that's you're just saying that as like you're curious about that issue. I'll
Like that
inquire
is a
about
known
it.
issue.
I get weird answers from vegans, but that would be an interesting thing to discuss for sure. Like pharmaceutical.
What's the weird answer you get to try
I'm
and
assuming
extend this as long as possible?
I'm assuming that you're meaning about like animal testing for pharmaceutical products, or using animals in general for pharmaceutical products. I'm assuming that's what is meant. But yeah, that is an interesting topic. Maybe we can do a video about that, like vivisection and I guess what some people might consider necessary animal use in the medical industry. That would be an interesting topic to discuss. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, we might have to think about that as a future topic. Thanks for the
On that
suggestion.
cliffhanger, thanks, contrarian. We'll leave it on a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Lots of different things we can discuss. Hey.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So we're doing
Thanks.
activism in 2 weeks, aren't we? So if anybody wants to join us in Adelaide,
Yeah. If anyone's in Adelaide and you want to come out and do activism with us, just hit us up.
16th of March.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's right.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
contrarian. See ya.